The recording has started. Welcome. I am Gazbot for Action Activate. And if I'm Gazbot, well, then this is
The Shin Dog.
the Shin Dog. Hey, Shin Gazbot and Shin Dog. Oh, I didn't even notice. It was my joke. You added into it. Blah, whatever.
I
Okay.
did.
The joke police are coming. Can you hear that stuff in the background or no?
I can. They're coming to take down a review because they're like, you already put out a review this week. What are you guys doing? You're only allowed
Yeah,
for a
well-
week. You're over quota. What's going on? Well, we are here to talk about Shin Ultraman. We are, on the front lines, breaking news. We are always the first to review everything, just like Mystic Force. So we are going to be the first review you've ever seen of Shin Ultraman,
Yes.
possibly maybe.
Especially since it's already been out for months, and probably people could bootleg it and see it in other countries. But it was on theaters here in the U.S. officially today for the first time. We literally both just saw it 7 o'clock at night, California time. It's now like 9:30. We watched the movie, got in our car. You're sitting in a parking deck. I'm sitting outside of a Dunkin' Donuts. I didn't see it with anyone else. I saw it by myself. You saw it with a friend. Did you guys discuss it a little bit afterwards?
We did. So the buddy that I watched it with is more of a Toku fan than me, a lot more of a purist. So he understood a lot more of the references and is a bigger Ultraman fan than I. The funny thing going into the movie is, for anybody familiar with the Bay Area, I saw this in Mountain View, California. And before this evening, to my knowledge, there was one theater in Mountain View, California, next to a big theater field. That is not the case.
Where they have like plays.
Yeah, so we went there, and they're like, your QR code scans and it's valid, but it's not working, and I don't know why. So then the manager came over and he scanned it, and he goes, can I see your confirmation? I'm like, yeah, it's right here. He's like, that is not for here.
Was it part of the same chain, or was it for a completely different theater?
Completely different theater. So I was like, my bad. So thankfully, my buddy who I went with lives around here. So he's like, this was 12 minutes before showtime. So we ran to the car, started booking it, made it to the theater, ran up the stairs, did this and that, made it on time, didn't even get through all the credits. It was awesome. Had popcorn, had nachos. It was a fancy theater where you could order food at your thing. So we went the whole 9 yards.
That is fantastic. Sorry, I was distracted. As I said, I'm outside, and somebody was riding a bike on the highway screaming just stuff at no one. So that distracted me for a minute because I wasn't sure if they were coming to talk to me or not. But so you got there. Did you see the things before the movie?
Where they said the thank you and talked about
all that. They had the actor talking about his take on the character and how he got the part and stuff, and then they had the director talking about it a little bit.
Yes, yeah. I missed part of that because when I saw that the trailers were going, I was like, cool, I can go to the bathroom. So I came in mid lead actor talking about the role and everything.
So you didn't miss too much then. No. I didn't see trailers at all. I walked in and it was whatever other thing was thanks for coming to the theater, and then the actor was there talking. It was cool that they had those. I was hoping for a little more. I think I was spoiled because when I went to see the re-release of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, they had a whole short in front of it. So I was like, oh, what else? And a behind-the-scenes documentary. I'm like, oh, yeah. So it was fine, but I think I was a little spoiled. What's next? And then the movie started.
Yeah. So all right. You are a bigger Ultraman fan than I as well. What were your initial impressions on the film?
Very, very good. Very good overall. That's my initial impression. There was a lot of fan service, but not so much that I think a casual viewer couldn't have. You didn't need to know Ultraman to understand what was happening. But the more you knew Ultraman, the more you would get these little wings. And I don't know how much of how deep your friend's fandom goes. I know the first series of Ultraman pretty well, and there was a lot of references to that. But even with me, I've only watched the whole thing maybe once or twice. I don't know it backwards and forwards perfectly. And so I was catching, I'm going to estimate I caught about a third of the references. And there was other stuff that I'm like, that's probably a reference. What was that again? And kind of half remembered. And I know that's a thing. I don't know what it is, but I know it's a thing, What about you?
There were some I definitely knew better than others. I did appreciate that I knew some of the kaiju and villains. I know, honestly, kudos to you. Whenever you randomly draw one as a warm-up sketch, I try to recognize the name. I'm like, oh, was it Zeton?
Mm-hmm.
Was that one of them? Okay. So I saw that. I'm like,
hey! We're going to get into spoilers in this, by the way.
Yeah. So
we'll give a heads up before we get into heavy spoilers. But yes, Zeton was in the movie, and he is one that I did a sketch card for.
One thing I liked as well is I was talking to my buddy on the way to the movie about when you and I saw Mazinger Z Infinity years ago in a similar way. And I was like, yeah, I had no idea what Mazinger was. And I went and it was awesome. And my first reaction after seeing it with you was, where do I get those figures? And what was cool about Ultraman being delayed is I went into the movie going, I already have figures from this. All right, I'm even more excited.
And as predicted, I want figures. I don't feel too bad about not getting them earlier because I know they're like available. They're not like crazy hard to get right now yet.
Yeah.
The one thing I haven't looked into because I didn't want spoilers. I never even watched a trailer for this. Like I saw part of a teaser trailer and I'm like, I know I'm going to see it, you know. Yeah. I've seen a few spoiler images, some of which I saw and forgot. Like for example, and again, we're getting to spoiler territory. Zoffy's in it. And I kind of knew that. And he's gold, which he normally isn't. And I think that's fine. It's a minor change to make him more of a unique character. And I remember seeing a gold Ultraman figure and thinking, oh, that's probably Zoffy or something. But I forgot until he showed up. I'm like, oh, you know, so I had a few of those like image spoilers, as well as some of the kaiju that showed up and stuff. But that's my next question. Having not deliberately not looked into the toys too much, I wonder how many kaiju toys there are. Because I know there's Shin Ultraman and a couple versions of that and Zoffy. But I don't know if they have any of the Shin kaiju, you know, because some of them were pretty awesome.
Yeah, I want to look into that with you as well on the kaiju front. I have 2 versions of Shin Ultraman and 1 version of Zoffy.
Okay, so you have the gray and the red, I guess?
No. Like I have 2 different companies made the same figure.
Oh, both with the red on it?
Yeah, I have the Mafex and the 3-0.
Gotcha. Well, you'll have to let me know which one you think is better for the price point.
I've heard, I'm leaning towards the 3-0 because it's more chromy, which isn't as accurate to the movie. But
I mean, the movie's pretty chromy.
No, this one's like way too shiny. But like in a way that you would appreciate. So I have a feeling that one is probably the one for you.
Yeah. And while it might be chromier than the movie, this version of Ultraman is way chromier than previous versions.
Correct. Yeah.
Because of CGI as opposed to a silver suit.
The one thing though.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. All of the figures don't come with ray effects.
Which I remember you saying that, and I was like, well, I haven't seen the movie. I don't know. Ultraman uses not all of his powers, but all the big ones, you know, the Specium Ray and the Slash and all that. Like, they could have at least given the Specium Ray, if nothing else. It's weird that they didn't. I wonder, though, if there's like a can of beams or some other third-party person that has a generic energy effect that could be used for such purpose. What I was saying, CGI. Overall, the CGI was good. Some places it was better than others.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing because I have to remind myself, it's not Sentai, it's not Power Rangers, it's got a bigger budget than that. But the biggest budget movies in Japan still aren't Avengers. You know, they still don't have that kind of resources. So there were parts that I thought were like fantastic by anybody's standards, you know. And then there were parts where I'm like, that kind of looks like a video game. You know?
Yeah.
But overall,
his first fight was that overall. Like CGI wise, his first fight with the first kaiju was very much like, this is like a really good YouTube video / video game animation, but I am accepting it for what it is.
I would even go a little bit better on that first fight. And you're not wrong, but part of the selling point is the choreography and the angles and the shots they chose. And to the point where some of the less dynamic shots, you could almost convince me there was a suit actor. There was a few shots where it was just like doing like this pose. And I'm like, I know that's not a suit actor, but like, I wonder if they used mocap or something. Because there were definitely moments where I'm like, that looks really real. Like,
my favorite part of the movie outside of plot was that all of the fights had music either from or in like homage to the original Ultraman.
Great point. I loved the music. I couldn't believe how retro it was. And not just like retro, but like specifically like 60s Ultraman, you know, like, and to the point where I'm like, anybody that like the old Ultraman is going to be like, oh, this is getting me right in the feels. And anybody like youngish that's like maybe getting into it for the first time, it's going to be like music they don't even know. You know what I mean? It's going to be it'll be new in a way. It's so old, it's new. The whole movie, it started off for me, like, I liked the whole thing, but I feel like it started off really strong. And it was good and good. And then towards the middle, towards the end, it slowed down a little bit. And then it picked up again. And then the ending was like fine. But, you know, like, but it was like, for the first, I'm going to just make up a number, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm like, this is amazing. This is one of the best movies I've ever seen. You know, not perfect CGI notwithstanding.
Relatively.
Yeah, this is great. I can't believe how good this is. And by the end, I'm like, that was very good. I enjoyed it very much. But it definitely, I wasn't at that. I was like A+ for a minute, you know, and it came down a little bit as I watched it.
Yeah, I will say one thing to your point of like the different generations to appreciate it. So the theater I went to wasn't small in terms of scale, but small in terms of like it was the deluxe seating. So they mean it to be like not a ton of people in there. So there was a couple sitting next to my friend and I, and the woman was sitting directly next to me. And when I got up in a very thick Japanese accent, she's like, "Oh, I like both of your shirts." He had a Ultra 7 and a Zero shirt, and I had my American Toku shirt. And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's Ultraman Zero, blah, blah, blah." And she was like, "Oh, like I'm just a fan of the original Ultraman, so like I watched it when I was a kid, and I wanted to see this." And to your point, I thought that was awesome. Where like I know about this much about Ultraman, and she probably knows about the same or more, but she's like, it's pretty much like the old one, but new. Like it was good. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it definitely, and he said this in the interview. He's like, I was trying to recapture the first Ultraman, and then it's a different character and slightly different circumstances, you know. But like, it was, you know, very true to the original Ultraman.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the music and the shots they chose, they had all kinds of dynamic, modern stuff going on. Like especially in that first fight when he was fighting the drill monster, whose name I remember, I forget right now. But then there were shots, a lot of shots where like, look, it's through the trees, and he's just like, and I recognize shots. I'm like, I've seen these shots in the show. Like even though it's CGI, they're like shooting it as though they have a camera and there's a person. Like they did a similar thing because it was the same director with Shin Godzilla, where like even though they could kind of do anything, and at times they grounded a lot of the movie in like, well, let's pretend we have a camera and there's a person there and we have to film it from certain angles. And like, I don't know, that felt cool. And the other thing is when they did use CGI, a lot of times they did things they did in the show, like the rigid, perfectly stiff flying. And there was a lot of stuff in the original show and the later shows that's just weird. Just like, it's the 60s, we have to show a special effect, I don't know, spin it around or make a spark come out, we don't know. And they replicated a lot of that stuff in a way that I liked because it looked so, like that first thing where he comes in, he kind of and like kicks him. I laughed out loud. In a good way, because like that was ridiculous, but it was paying homage to the original stuff, and B, it's like, this is some weird light alien. Why would he move and fight the way we do? There's no gravity on him. He can fly sideways, you know, it doesn't matter, and it just gave the whole thing a weird vibe that I liked.
Yeah, I love the references they made, even just the single one-liners acknowledging all that, where it's like, why do kaiju only show up in Japan? I don't know, but they do. That's just a thing we got to deal with. I don't know.
Yes. And it had a little bit of political stuff in there too, not as much as Shin Godzilla, but definitely talking about being a vassal state to other countries, and the U.S. kind of being like, well, we'll sell you the bombs, but you know, you got to pay for those bombs, and like, you know, like, which, you know, I don't mind at all. Like this kind of stuff has always been vaguely political, if not overtly political. And that's not to say this was a political movie, but there was just a couple mentions of that kind of stuff, and it rings true. There's a big disaster, and there's always people looking at the angles and how do we profit, and you know, it felt to me, in a way. Here's the thing: I kind of hoped this would be like, oh, people in America that have never seen Ultraman, this is going to be the thing that'll like, no. This is for people who already love Ultraman or who like Tokusatsu, who are like foreign films. This is not going to get mainstream people into Ultraman. You have to have your toe in that pool a little bit at least, because it's a weird movie. It makes weird choices, which I loved. But it also, one of the choices, it felt to me like a TV show. And what I mean by that is, it felt like I just watched a season of a show. It had a couple different arcs. It had a lot of, like, you know, just the way it was shot a lot of times, other than the big epic battles. But I liked that. I felt like there was arcs and character development, and like, here's this bad guy. Oh, no, but he's not the real bad guy. And here's the final boss. And like, you don't see that in movies a lot.
Yeah, it was like an elevated TV movie to me as well. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way,
Me
but
either.
just the expectation is different. And also, I think this is better, like you said, because it's understanding what it's trying to do instead of trying to fill a role that it isn't. And I think
Well, and
that's also
having
true.
yes,
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's also true of just the story in general, where it was, this is Ultraman, and he's from space, and we don't know a lot about him, and he fights kaiju, and he's good, and you know he's
right,
good. And then various
yeah,
parts of the movie, like in one part where there's the villain who pretends to be Ultraman, and then I love the line, it's like, everything is pointing to this being Ultraman. I don't feel like it is, but, it's telling me it is,
right,
so I believe it wholeheartedly.
right. That was not Melphis, Zarab.
Zerub, yeah.
Yeah,
That was a good
and
fight, too.
they also did a great job updating the kaiju, the aliens, the Seijians. Zarab looked very very similar to his original suit, like the weird design, and even like the kind of like the rib, like
It looks
kind of
hollow
like
almost.
but the hollow, that was new. That's what I was gonna say. Like
Yeah.
he looked like, okay, they've kind of updated a bit, but like they always update him. But then when I realized he was hollow, I'm like, that's crazy looking. I love it. It's so
Yeah.
weird that it's like he doesn't look that. Nope. Okay, but there's this other. Okay, he's 2-dimensional. I guess that's weird and cool.
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, it didn't feel like a TV movie. It felt like I want to reiterate like that. You're welcome to feel that way. But it felt to me like a season. It felt like there was a bunch of episodes condensed in. And the more I think about it, that's exactly what it was. Because, again, I don't remember every beat and every moment from the first season of Ultraman. But there is Zarab shows up and imitates Ultraman, and that happened in the movie. And there's the whole beginning where there's a disaster and he merges with the human. And then at the end, big spoilers, at the end of the series of Ultraman, it's a kaiju, an alien called Zeton that defeats and kills Ultraman in the last episode. And then Zoffy comes and they kind of separates them, and a lot of the major beats from the whole first season are replicated in this movie in a way that I like.
It was kind of, yeah, then it was like a best of movie. Like it was,
yeah.
Because to me, like when I think of TV show seasons, for better or worse, they're long. Like
Yes.
that's the both strength and weakness of any TV show. And this was, what did you like about the TV show? We're gonna put that in 2 hours.
Yeah. The only thing, I mean, there's lots of stuff you could say should have been added because whatever. But the only thing that struck me as odd was that Baltan Sajian wasn't in it, because he's like the Dalek. He's like the most famous one.
Yeah.
And my thought was either they want to do a sequel to him, but it's a race, or they didn't want to do that because that's the one. That's the one everyone expects. That's the one that has all these expectations on it, and how are you going to do your new twist on it. And maybe they're just like, you know what, we don't need it. Let's do these other ones then,
Yeah, that's fair. I will say this makes me want to go finally watch Shin Godzilla, because I've been meaning to, and I just haven't.
Shin Godzilla still? Oh my god. Well, I'll say this. I personally enjoyed this way more than Shin Godzilla, although I really liked Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla is like a weird new Godzilla take. You know what I mean? It's very different from every other Godzilla, with the exception of maybe the first, arguably. But this is the opposite. This is so Ultraman it hurts. You know what I mean? So they kind of went in different directions, but I think they're both good movies.
I am very excited for Shin Kamen Rider now, because I heard it's going to be very serious and dark, and I think this is like that amplification where I'm hoping it's kind of like you said, the combination of a very unique kind of its own thing, but the roots are going to be there strong, where it's it's a metaphorical like movie mullet. It's got everything and then it's just going buck wild with it. So I think that'll be really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm trying to think. This director, I think he did Evangelion.
Yes.
But he did the live action one, right? Is that what it is?
I don't remember. My buddy was saying like he loves Ultraman and always wanted to do an Ultraman project, and Evangelion was him being like, yep, this is like Ultraman, kind of.
I guess, and that's the thing, because I have not seen any live action Evangelion. I don't know what is even out there. I've seen a chunk of the anime. I know they kind of restarted it, and so I've seen some of the first one and some of the second one, and they were supposed to be this. Whatever. The point is, I know an okay amount about Evangelion, not as much as most. And I can see shades of that in Ultraman and in Shin Godzilla, in the weird stuff, in the bizarreness of it. But I don't know if this director, and I could have looked this up, if he did the anime or a live action, but whatever. But yeah, I would watch anything this guy does. If there's movies of his that I haven't seen, I'll go watch them. And I'm excited for Kamen Rider, like you said. Before I forget, the other thing I wanted to mention, and I'm 99% sure about this, but I'd have to go back and look. When Ultraman first shows up and is gray, first of all, I believe there's an episode of Ultra Q, which was the series that predated Ultraman, where there was a monotone version of Ultraman that looked like that. Never in the original series, but I think it's paying homage to that.
Gotcha.
And again, the part I'd have to go back and check, I think his mouth in the first scene before he merged with the human was sort of more rubbery, squishy, weird looking, which even in Ultraman, there was 3 suits. And the first suit, the main difference is the head mask was a lot more rubbery and had a weird kind of mouth, and then later became more like a helmet. And that's because originally they were my thought was that the first version we saw that was gray and had the weird mouth was like the pure Ultraman. Then he merges with the human and he gets a little more streamlined. He gets the color, and and I thought that was a cool way of including both versions, kind of.
One thing, speaking of the suit, that I love to change for this is instead of having the kind of indicator in the center, his whole suit changed, which I'm like, oh, thank you, that is awesome, and now I need a green one.
I was gonna say that is cool, and my next question is, do you need a green one, and do they make a green one? Because it'd be hard to believe. Here's what I want, because I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I want one that when you get it cold, it turns green, or when you put it in the sun,
that'd be awesome.
Green.
Yeah,
I want some kind of color change feature. That's what I want.
Yeah,
but yeah, I really enjoyed it. The ending was bonkers. The ending was very anime. And I kind of came around on it because it was like, okay, he goes up against Zeton, which is now this like global defense destroying system, but it still looked like the alien. He gets his butt kicked. Okay. And then it was like, oh, the humans are going to do it. And I'm like, I mean, I like the message of humans have to pull themselves up. But like, are we really just going to watch the humans open up a portal now? And they're like, no, Ultraman has to do it. I'm like, oh, okay, Ultraman has to do it. The humans work with Ultraman. Great. And then they're like, here's how it's going to work. There's going to be you activate it twice, and then there's a portal, and you have a split second, blah, blah. And what we saw him do didn't really line up to what they said he was going to do in my mind. I'm like, that didn't look like, I thought there'd be one of those like split second slow motion, and and I'm like, okay. And I guess he's just powering through the ball there and whatever. And it kind of started to lose me. But then when it showed him in that black and white dimension and just like flipping around, and I'm like, this is nuts in a good way. Again, going back to like, this looks like, hey, it's 1965. Make something crazy, and they did. And it was just it was nuts in a way I liked. And then following that, when he was in, I guess the same another dimension with Zolfi, all that background stuff looked like the paint swirl from the beginning of the show back in the day, which they also replicated at the beginning of the movie. So I really like that. So it kind of lost me because I'm like, this is just weird. And then it got so weird. I'm like, okay, I'm back in.
Yeah, I need to watch like some YouTube breakdowns of the ending again just to kind of get like more context of it, because I feel very similarly to you where like I didn't fully get it and I want to see other people's perspectives. But overall, I really liked it. Oh, hang on. Before you go, my phone's going to die like any second. So I'm going to try to wrap up my end at the very least. And if you need to keep going,
do it.
Please, by all means.
No, but we've been going for a little bit. Thumbs up. I recommend seeing it if you can. It's out again tomorrow, and eventually it'll be on home video or whatever.
Yeah, today we watched it with subtitles. Tomorrow is dubbed only, depending on the theater. I think it's dubbed only. And it was good. I would give it a solid like B+. I mean, it was great. Being a new-ish Ultraman fan, like I liked it.
Objectively, I would give it a B+. Me personally, I'd give it an A, but like that's me. I think realistically it's a B+. I do think it's an easier buy-in than Shin Godzilla. Oh, Shin Godzilla, Gomez is one of the first monsters we see in that quick cut stuff. It's made out of it looks like Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, I know, yeah, and they put the stuff on it.
Yes, but back in '64, they took a Godzilla suit and made that, and I'm like, they didn't have to do that. That's awesome. So right in the very beginning, I'm like, this is awesome. That's the best thing I've ever seen. Like right to start the movie. So anyway, thumbs up. I'll put this up right away. Thanks for being with us. I've been Gazbot.
Still the Shin Dog, and to the power See y'all
Oh,
later.
so good. See ya. I'm gonna end.